Greetings, productive programmer. So in our last lesson, we demonstrated how to render a Heeks file inside of another. And that's exactly what we did here, where it says this is where users will read and make comments. And we did that using this test component that we set up, this test LiveView component, which we generated just as an example to demonstrate how to stick one Heeks file inside of another. But we actually don't need to really use any of this stuff for our application. I remember I said previously when we were creating our stories that the form component was one of the most valuable assets that gets generated for us by Phoenix LiveView generators. And the reason that I said that is very apparent now, because this pretty much does everything that we need it to. And we can actually ignore all of the index, the show, and the test module that we just created. But what we can do is inside of the index.html Heeks, there's actually this example of the live component that uses the form component I'm referencing. So what we can do is we can actually take this form from the live component here. It's very similar to on our stories, how if we go to create a new story, you see these live generators are all going to be the same. This is for the stories endpoint. We didn't set up the comments endpoint, but it essentially would be a form kind of like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take that form from the index.html Heeks and we're going to steal it. And what we actually don't need a modal. So I hope this isn't too confusing, but you just have to remember that even though I'm using this comment live index.html Heeks file, even though we haven't set up this route, you have to remember that this is basically identical because it's just made by the same LiveView generator that generated our stories. So we have another live component that's very similar to it here, you see? So when we go ahead and we click new story, it's creating this modal that pops up our form component here. So that's the same exact thing that we would have generated for us by our comments. So I can take this component here. I don't need to necessarily have a modal. What I'm thinking is instead of having a pop up here, what I'm gonna do where we have this message here that we generated before, where we did the example of how to put a Heeks file inside of another, we're going to have this be the form. And we don't need to have a pop-up to create comments. We can just have people enter comments directly into an input field here. So what I'm going to do is I'm inside the comment live folder, and where's this index.html Heeks. Instead of taking the module here, I'm just going to take this live component and I'm going to steal that. And then I'm going to go to our show live story and our Heeks file, I should say, and where we did this demonstration that we rendered this test module. I'm going to put our component here and see if we can just have this component be right here for us. So let's see. All right, so big giant error. So it's saying comment not found. And that's because this is requiring the comments to be in the socket. So we're going to need to go to our mount here, and where we mount this, inside of our story live show module, we need to mount that comment so that way this doesn't break. It's just looking for a key. And by default, our comment passes that key in here. So okay, so we are going to set this up so that the socket will assign that. So I'm just going to do assigns, and I'm going to assign to the socket a comment, and that comment will just have a comment struct. So for now, this will probably need to pass data in here. Actually, I don't think we will. These are going to be new comments, so I don't think we actually will need to pass data in here. So we just need to have a comment struct to start off with. So I'm going to alias the blog comments comment. So what we're doing is we used our LiveView generator to generate our comments, and now, oh, and I typed assigns here. This should just be assign. That's why it's giving me this red line. So we're going to assign to the socket, not assigns. So, okay, so just to make sense of what I did here, why did I do this? Well, we used our LiveView generators where we typed into the terminal. We generated the comment. Basically, all of these files were generated for us. And again, the most important one being this form component. These are always like really the most useful pieces of the LiveView generators essentially, because that's what all the other files that are generated essentially make use of that form component. So we're stealing that form component and we're plopping it right down here onto our page. And look, now it renders. And the reason that it didn't render before is because we're trying to pass a comment to it. And we're just going to mount it with a comment struct, just as a default here. So just so that we can get this to render. So essentially, this is all we need. I'm going to get rid of this line here. It looks messy. So where we had this test render thing here, I'm just going to get rid of this. And then this is really close to the title here. So what we can do is we'll just go ahead and wrap that in a div. And this div will be able to handle that. So let's go ahead and add the class of margin top, and we'll set that. And we'll make sure that this is a closing div. And now when we render this out, it has that space in. Okay, so this is a good first step. Okay, so now our stories display a comment field, and you can see again that is not a modal, so I just took it out of the modal and I put it directly here into the page as a live component. So that way it's kind of more seamless here, and we can just have the comments be directly on the page. So if I say hello, this is a comment, and we try to save this, we are getting an error currently. We can come over and take a peek at what kind of error we're getting, and we'll continue fixing this up so that it functions. So it says no function clause match in the comment live form component save comment. So we can come over to our comment live form component, and we can see here where we have same comment. We are handling the save because the handle save event does get hit. And then it looks like it can't make a match here. So it's trying to match socket, assigns action, and comment params. The actions that it supports is edit and new. And it looks like we're passing the live action here. So the live action is actually going to need to change. So I believe since we are in the show file here, I believe the action is currently show. What we can do is we can just hard code this. We can just tell it that the action in this case is going to be new, because this is going to be new comments. And since we're only ever going to create new comments with this field here, I'm not going to currently allow editing comments. So we can just go ahead and get rid of the comment ID here and just assume that these will be only new comments for now. And if we make this to be new comments, so if we wanted to have edit comments, then maybe we could utilize some of these other generated LiveView templates for us. So we could use, the index, the show, and the other ones that were here. So that way we could go in and edit our comments in the future. But for now, we're just going to focus on creating new comments. And I think that this will work. Patch here says no route for comments. So I know this is going to be an issue too. This is another thing we'll need to change. What we'll do is we'll patch to where we currently are. So we'll just stay where we currently are, and we can do stories, and then we will be at the current stories ID. So we'll be the current stories ID. So let's go back here and let's try that again. So let's test again. So if we click save, it says comment created successfully, and it does not throw any errors like it did before. So now that looks good. Now, obviously, there's no comments appearing now, so that's a concern. But do note, when I go back to our Postgres shell and we select everything from the comments, we do have all of our comments generated here for us, so we can see them. So even though they're not displaying here on our page yet, we are creating the comments and we are generating them. But I guess the problem here is that they don't have a story ID associated with them right now. So now that we have this function in, make sure that you have your comment field displaying here, and you can leave comments and you can save them, and it says that it's successful, and it does not try to it doesn't throw any errors. So we had to make sure that our patch was set up correctly, and we also had to make sure that our action was set to new because we're creating new comments, so that way the form component will function correctly. So just be aware of that. Those are a couple things that you need to do. So the story ID is not generating yet, but we will address that in our next lesson. So I'll see you over in the next lesson where we'll make our story IDs get associated here correctly. And then we will continue building out the functionality, make sure that these comments function like they should. So that way, just like medium.com, we can go into a story and I can leave a comment on somebody else's story.